Flames tore through the old wooden cabin. The fire roared into the night, lighting up the dark forest. Kyle laughed in front of the burning walls, raising his bottle toward the flames. The roof cracked, then collapsed into the fire. Burning wood crashed down as sparks exploded into the sky. Marcus kicked the fire higher while Tyler stepped back from the heat. Dylan kept staring at the burning cabin. Then the four of them turned away and walked into the trees, their laughter fading behind them. They thought it was just a fire. They didn't notice the forest watching. Deep in the shadows, Elias Ward stood still, and he did not look afraid. When the flames died down, Elias stepped into the clearing. He walked slowly through the ashes, his boots crunching softly against burnt wood. The scent of smoke filled the air. He knelt beside the charred remains of the doorway and touched the blackened ground. For a long moment, the forest was silent. Then Elias whispered quietly, almost like he was speaking to someone unseen. "They've forgotten." The wind stirred gently through the trees. "They've forgotten what this place is." His voice trembled with something deeper than anger. "I haven't." He rose to his feet and disappeared into the woods. The next morning, the town of Briar Hollow woke to cold gray skies. At the diner on Main Street, the four boys crowded into a booth, still buzzing from the night before. Kyle grinned while stirring his coffee. "Best fire I've seen in years." Marcus laughed. "You should have seen Tyler's face when the roof collapsed." Tyler rolled his eyes. "I thought the whole forest was gonna catch." Dylan sat quietly, staring out the window. "You guys hear something weird last night?" he asked suddenly. Kyle frowned. "Like what?" "I don't know, when we were leaving. I swear I heard something moving in the trees." Marcus snorted. "Probably a deer." Dylan shook his head slowly. "No. It sounded bigger." Kyle leaned back in his seat. "You're just spooked because of that old man." "Did you see him?" Dylan asked. The table went silent. Marcus shrugged. "Nah. Probably drunk somewhere." But outside the diner window, the forest stretched along the horizon, dark and endless. And something inside it was awake. That evening, Marcus decided to go hunting. The forest was thick and quiet as he walked the familiar trails with his rifle slung over his shoulder. He had been hunting these woods since he was a kid. Nothing about it scared him. But today felt different. The deeper he walked, the quieter everything became. No birds. No insects. Just the sound of wind brushing through tall pines. Marcus stopped. "Hello," he called out jokingly. "Old Man Ward, that you?" Only silence answered. He chuckled and kept walking. A branch snapped behind him. Marcus turned quickly. "Who's there?" The trees stood motionless. "Very funny," he muttered. He turned back toward the trail. Except the trail was gone. Marcus frowned. "That's weird." He spun slowly, scanning the forest. The path he had been following had simply vanished. "Okay," he said nervously. "Not funny anymore." The wind picked up suddenly. Branches creaked. Then something moved between the trees. Marcus lifted his rifle. "Show yourself." For a moment, he thought he saw a figure standing in the shadows. Tall, still, watching. "Elias," Marcus called. The figure didn't move. Marcus took a step forward. The ground beneath him shifted. Roots twisted up from the earth like living snakes, wrapping around his boots. "What the?" He tried to pull free. The roots tightened. "Hey, somebody help." The forest swallowed his screams. Marcus was never seen again. 2 days later, the town was on edge. Search teams combed through the woods, but there was no trace of Marcus. Inside the local bar, Kyle slammed his glass on the counter. "This is stupid," he snapped. "People don't just vanish." Tyler looked pale. "Maybe he got lost." Dylan shook his head. "Marcus doesn't get lost." Kyle scoffed. "You really think that old guy did something?" Dylan leaned closer. "You didn't see his face that night." Kyle frowned. "What do you mean?" "When he was standing by the trees, he looked like he wasn't angry." Dylan's voice dropped to a whisper. "He looked disappointed." Tyler shivered. "Stop talking like that." Kyle grabbed his jacket and stood up. "I'm going out there tomorrow. I'm gonna find Marcus and prove all this ghost story crap is nonsense." The others exchanged uneasy glances. That night, Tyler woke suddenly. A scratching sound echoed against his bedroom wall. Slow, dragging, like something clawing through wood. He sat up in bed. "Hello." The scratching stopped. Tyler exhaled nervously. Then the window creaked open. Cold air flooded the room. Outside, the trees swayed violently, even though the rest of the town was calm. Tyler walked slowly toward the window. "Who's out there?" A whisper drifted through the wind. So loud, when they burned it. Tyler froze. "Who said that?" The forest answered with silence. But the scratching returned, this time from inside the walls. The next morning, Tyler was gone. His bedroom window was wide open, and deep claw marks covered the wooden floor. The town sheriff gathered the remaining boys in his office. "This isn't funny anymore," the sheriff said sternly. "2 people missing in the same week." Kyle rubbed his temples. "You think we don't know that?" Dylan stared at the floor. The sheriff leaned forward. "Last time Marcus was seen, he was heading into the forest. Same place that old man lives." Kyle laughed bitterly. "Lives. His cabin's ash now." The sheriff narrowed his eyes. "Funny thing about that." Kyle looked up. "What? We checked the clearing yesterday." "And?" The sheriff's voice dropped. "The cabin's standing again." The room went silent. "That's impossible," Kyle said. "That's what I thought." Dylan's heart pounded. "You're saying, it rebuilt itself?" The sheriff shook his head slowly. "I'm saying someone is living there again." Kyle stood abruptly. "Then let's go talk to him." The sheriff hesitated. But Kyle was already heading for the door. By dusk, the 3 of them reached the clearing. Dylan stopped walking. Oh my God. The cabin stood exactly where it had before. Not burned. Not damaged. Perfect. Kyle whispered. "We watched it burn." The front door creaked open. Elias Ward stepped outside. His face looked older than before. But his eyes were calm. "Evening," he said quietly. The sheriff stepped forward. "Mr. Ward, we need to ask you some questions." Elias nodded slowly. "I expected you would." Kyle's anger exploded. "You think this is funny, old man? Our friends are missing." Elias studied him carefully. "Are they?" "Don't play games." The forest rustled around them. Elias looked past Kyle toward the trees. "They woke something when they burned this place." Kyle scoffed. "You mean you?" Elias shook his head. "No." His voice softened. "This forest." The sheriff frowned. "That doesn't make any sense." Elias turned his gaze back to Kyle. "You burned its heart." Kyle stepped closer. "You're insane." Elias sighed. "For 70 years I protected this land." He gestured toward the towering trees. "I kept the balance." The wind whispered through the branches. "But pain demands an answer." Kyle grabbed Elias by the collar. "You're gonna tell us where they are." Elias didn't resist. He only said quietly, "Listen." The forest suddenly erupted with sound. Branches snapped. Leaves roared. Shadows moved between the trees. Kyle released the old man and spun around. "What the hell is that?" Figures began to emerge from the darkness. Shapes made of twisting roots and bark. Tall as men, moving slowly toward them. The sheriff backed away. "Sweet Jesus." Dylan whispered, "The forest." Elias closed his eyes. "It remembers." The ground trembled. Kyle ran. He sprinted blindly through the woods, crashing through branches and brush. Behind him, the forest moved. Trees bent. Roots crawled. Voices whispered in the wind. "You burned it. You burned it." Kyle stumbled into a clearing. He froze. The cabin stood there again. Unburned. Unbroken. The door creaked open. Elias sat inside beside a small fire. Kyle's voice shook. "How are you here?" Elias looked at him sadly. "You came back." Kyle backed away. "No, this isn't real." Elias spoke gently. "You didn't burn my home." The wind howled outside. "You burned the forest's heart." Branches slammed against the walls. The trees leaned closer. Kyle screamed as roots burst through the ground. The forest closed around him. By morning, the clearing was silent. The sheriff's car sat abandoned on the dirt road. Dylan had vanished. Kyle had vanished. The town searched for weeks. But the forest gave nothing back. Deep in the woods, the cabin still stood quietly beneath the towering pines. And every evening, Elias Ward sat on the porch watching the trees sway gently in the wind. Sometimes he whispered softly into the darkness. And the forest listened.